It is an oddly glorious day in London, and I am out on my motorcycle for a ride, and I happen to find myself behind this little magenta Mini. And most of the time when people come to visit me in London, they ask, why do you live in such a gray, dreary place? And I think most Londoners probably get that question, and it's for days like this. Days like this, you celebrate how glorious and beautiful this city is, even on this crappy little ring road. I'd say I've been in London for the better part of 15 years now, and growing up in the New York City metropolitan area and spending my young adulthood there, I never really felt at home. Always felt like there was somewhere better to be. But since moving to London, I don't feel that way anymore. Now I feel like there's nowhere else to live than London. I can't imagine living anywhere else but London. It's nice to feel that way. But in that time here in London and those ebbs and flows and social and political and economic change, I've noticed a change in the motorcycling community. I mean, definitely when I moved here, the whole cafe racer or the reborn cafe racer phenomenon was young. I had a buddy who lived down the road from me, and he had a motorcycle garage, and I brought a shitty 1980 Yamaha XS400, and we started doing a little bobber thing with it, kind of a cafe racer bobber thing. This was in 2006, I'd say, and it was definitely unique at the time. Now it would just be a dime a dozen. I'd probably say the arc of that style has probably reached the top of its bell curve, now on its decline. I'd say because, you know, major manufacturers like, I don't know, everybody, BMW, Triumph, Harley-Davidson, Indian, Yamaha, Honda's coming late to the show, all have a modern retro offering right off the factory. I'd say if it's reached the mainstream, then the subculture has been absorbed. And I'd say I see less and less custom retro mods, you know, custom cafe racers, 70s and 80s bikes. All those guys who used to ride those things have sold those on and are now just riding Triumphs, which is fine. When I was working on that first bike, I think it was the first of 3 bikes that I had that I was modifying here in London before I myself sold them on and bought this Royal Enfield. I just was talking to my buddy who was helping me, and he was riding around a brand new Aprilia, and he said, you know, there's something to be said about just pushing the button on your bike and having it run. It's one of the reasons I bought this thing. The other reason is that for all of the discussion and all of the celebration and all of the style of the custom or classic or cafe or bobber, rarely find someone to work on your bike. For the things that you don't know, or the things that you don't know how to do, or the things you don't keep a motorcycle repair shop's worth of tools around to fix, it was very difficult to find someone who would work on those bikes. And in that time period, one of the things on the rise with that whole style thing was the bike shed. The bike shed is where I'm headed today. Check it out. I've been there a couple of times before, but I've never ridden my bike over there. I've kind of happened upon it in a meandering walk once, and then I drove there on the way back into London from a holiday with the family, and we were all in the family car, and we had lunch. I haven't spent a lot of time there to have formed an opinion. The bike shed is an interesting byproduct of the phenomenon of the rise of motorcycle culture in London. From what I understand, it started as just a kind of Gumtree, Craigslist posting site for used motorcycles. Very stylish. Had a good logo, you know, it was black background with white lettering, good typeface. Not the best navigation for that kind of site. You kind of went there even if you weren't shopping to see what people were doing with their bikes. I could kind of blame the Bike Shed's early website for the bubble that happened in custom motorcycle pricing. You could get a 70s or 80s cafe racer style bike for probably 2 to 3 grand. But after the bike shed started selling their crap, or other people's crap, you had bikes going for 8 grand. I mean, someone would buy a bike for £1,000. They do some modifications, put some paint on, put a cafe racer seat on it, and holy crap, you got an £8,000 motorcycle, and people were buying them. From the increased popularity of that site, and I think the fees that they got from the sales, I don't know if you had I posted 1 or 2 things on the site to sell, but I can't remember if it was like a £15 charge or something to post your bike. I'm pretty sure there was a fee, but from there it blossomed into kind of a motorcycle club. And again, I don't really know what that means. You pay a membership and you're invited to some events, but I think you get a sticker, maybe a patch. I'm not really sure what the club membership gets. And I've been to the website a couple of times considering joining, but every time I've gone there, I've never actually pulled the trigger. So either when I'm there, there's not a big enough incentive to join, or I just don't know what I get by joining. I think they have a hand in running the London Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, and either they are We Ride London, who does advocacy, or they're very closely affiliated with We Ride London, which does political advocacy for motorcycling. But I'm heading over to the bike shed because it's a location, and maybe I'll get a clearer sense of what they're all about. When I think of motorcycle clubs, I think of things like the Hells Angels or the various firemen motorcycle clubs in the United States. You know, those firemen ones have a lot of ride-outs and charity events, so there's kind of a purpose to their organization. They do a lot of charity events and ride-outs to raise money for their fallen comrades and the families of people who have died in fires. I don't know what the Hells Angels are all about, but usually the motorcycle clubs that I think of, they have a bar. You know, it's a bar. And beyond there being a place to go and drink with your motorcycling buddies, not really sure what the point is. Most of these motorcycle destinations are like a restaurant or a bar or a gift shop, and you go there because you like the lifestyle, you like riding the motorcycle. Maybe it's just an excuse. It's like one of those empty destinations that gets you on the bike, and it's like the point B. It doesn't matter what the point B is, as long as there's a point B, you know, you gotta ride in to get there. So maybe the bike shed is like the Ace Cafe or Mike's Harley Davidson on the Delaware Memorial Bridge. It's a restaurant and a apparel store, but I hope it's a little more than that, because you know, you call yourself a club, and I do like the increased political advocacy that the bike shed is kind of getting involved with or promoting, because that's really, there's a mission behind it, there's a purpose behind it. It's not empty. I kind of feel the early bike shed stuff was just an exercise in marketing. It was almost like a assignment or a university project on motorcycle marketing. It's a bit too slick for authenticity. It's like you gave motorcycling to a committee and said, sell motorcycling to the masses. And that's what they came up with. Well, you can tell you're in East London because of the huge amount of burger joints and graffiti, but graffiti that also looks like a university project in graffiti. East London, and Shoreditch in particular, is kind of like Greenwich Village in the 90s. It was after it was gentrified, but still kind of hip. Maybe like Brooklyn is now. Though I haven't been to Brooklyn in years, so who knows. Maybe Brooklyn 10 years ago. You know, you drive through neighborhoods like this and you wonder how all of these young, fighting-aged young adults can sit in a cafe smoking their individually rolled cigarettes and not work. Maybe they're working at night in the bars and cafes where the people who are working during the day go. I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going, but I know it's under a train arch, so I'm gonna look for a train bridge and see, hey, there's one. And see if I can't find the bike shed. I do like the public artwork, but I think graffiti without the danger loses a bit of its value to me. And graffiti with hashtags and @ signs and by the artist also loses its danger for me as well. There it is, I just passed it. This wasn't the train bridge. The train goes that way. Alright, let's swing around and see about hitting the bike shed. Well, no right turn, so I gotta figure out how to get over there again anyway. There it is. I don't know if you can see it across the street. The bike shed. It's a modest sign. It looks like a sign you'd see on Nantucket. Ooh, there's a couple of bikes. I might know that guy with the orange helmet. I'm gonna pull over here, see if I can wave him over. Alex?
I thought I recognized that bike. How are you?
I like it. Were you just at the shed?
No, I'm trying to find my way to somewhere called the Rebel Alliance.
The Rebel Alliance. Oh, I've heard about they do nice custom bikes.
Apparently they also do really nice coffee.
Can I join you at the Rebel Alliance for coffee?
Yeah.
All right, lead on and then we can chat. So it looks like I'm skipping the bike shed today and heading over to the Rebel Alliance with a guy that I met a little while ago named Alex. He runs a very popular motorcycling Facebook page. He ran up to me one day after he heard my motorcycle ride by and talked to me about Royal Enfields. That little bike he's on now is a Sinus, a little Chinese-made scrambler. It's got a nice little poppy buzz to it. I like it. But he picked that up instead of a Enfield 300, a Bullet 300. Alright, farewell bike shed. I'll see you another day. It's funny he said he's going to see the Rebel Alliance. I did the Malay Mile a couple of years ago, which is a relatively interesting event. And I got smoked by a little 1975 CB125S cafe racer that they did in the kind of candy apple green. I have a stock version of that bike, and I was really taken by what they did to it. Really nice, but it turns out that they had boarded out and it was closer to like a 200, and it was a really light, gorgeous CB. They had done a really good job kind of keeping the original paint and making a steel cafe racer seat at the back, and it just smoked me. I mean, the gal who was riding it, I think I raced her 3 times. Every single time she smoked me. It was awesome. It was just a great little bike. I was on a 250, XS 250. 77, I think it was. But this CB and that rider just destroyed me. But that was made by the Rebel Alliance, so I'm interested in what their destination is, what their London destination might be, because I respect the work they did. Oops, we're going that way. There it is. Oh, wow. See, this was never here. This doesn't exist. This is... Ooh, that's a Yamaha flat tracker out front. This is the part of Brick Lane you used to go to buy stolen motorcycles and bicycles. Now it's a goddamn shopping mall. We were invited to park our bikes in front of the shop, which was really nice to see that we didn't have to pay for parking. And the additional bikes out front lent to the atmosphere of the shop overall and made us feel a bit more included, which is a nice touch for a visitor. The shop front had a great look. The hand-painted, multi-typeface motif was reminiscent of the old Coney Island tattoo shops that you'd see in pictures, or like the average motorcycle t-shirt that you'd see everywhere these days and probably purchase inside. As soon as I walked inside, I spotted the candy apple green Honda CB125 that I mentioned earlier in the video. I was surprised to see it still kicking around. When I had seen it at the Bike Shed London show a couple of years ago, I think they wanted £2,000 for it. I thought it was sold when I saw it at the Malay Mile a couple years ago. And I was actually a bit disappointed to see it there on the day, because then I started considering buying it myself. And that was the last thing I needed. The SR500 at the back caught my eye, and the mechanic came out of the shop, and he had a lot of time to talk about the bike with us. He then showed us the shop and where they conducted most of their fabrications. The shop doesn't repair bikes, but exclusively fabricates their own bikes or works on commissions for their clients. I was pleased to see a fair amount of real estate designated to the workshop. The retail portion of the shop is tastefully done and has all the trappings of a custom bike shop. The old tanks hanging on the walls, repurposed plumbing used for clothing racks, reclaimed street signs, and motorcycles hanging from the walls. But it's less off-putting than I would have thought. Perhaps it's the modest space that gives it a quaint rather than pretentious atmosphere. I couldn't tell what in the shop was new or vintage, or what was for sale or simply on display. All of it felt well outside of my comfort zone in terms of pricing for such items, although the coffees were reasonably priced. Whenever I visit spots like this, I can't reconcile how they keep the lights on in central London with the lack of foot traffic and how expensive things are, but however they do it, I was happy the lights were on when I visited. Well, that was a pleasant surprise. Making a new friend, checking out a new place. You know, the Rebel Alliance is literally down the street from the bike shed and it has that same kind of hipster polish to it. But what I did like about it, and again, I'm holding off judgment on Bike Shed. What I did like about the Rebel Alliance was that I'd say half of their floor space was designated to their fabrication. The mechanic was very friendly, approachable, had time for our questions, you know, wasn't standoffish or pompous in any way. He had time for us. The guy making the coffees, he had time for us. That was all good. And they had the bike that beat the shit out of me at the Melee Mile, which was awesome. For sale, price on application. I always think that's really funny. Price on application means we're asking too much. Anyway, I applied. $4 grand. I was wrong, it's 190 cc's. Not 200. I was wondering how they could bore out a 125 up to a 200, but they obviously couldn't, so it's 190. Fully restored, you might get 1100 for one. There was a guy who was selling a fully restored one, very tastefully done, on the Bike Shed about a year ago. He wanted 1800 quid for it, firm, couldn't sell it. $4 grand. I mean, it does have a provenance. It did beat Dick Whistles at the Melee Mile. It's nice to see it though. When I saw for sale, I started considering, I started scheming. I started ticking off all the bikes that are on the shopping list, going, yeah, I don't need that one, yeah, I don't need that one, yeah, I don't need that one. $4 grand. That'd just be a bike I admire. Mostly because I already own the bike. It would just be another version, and it certainly wouldn't take $4 grand to turn mine into that. But yeah, that's a good stop. I'd recommend stopping there. They had a good hot chocolate, nice little espresso for my companion. Pleasant people. Interesting merchandise, way too expensive for my taste, but it was a good atmosphere to sit and chat in. A bit put off by the whole shopping center feel of Shoreditch, but I guess if you're in that neck of the woods, it's worth a stop. I think that's the lovely thing about riding motorcycles around a city like London. You have the possibility of running into someone you know, or making a new friend, finding a new spot. You know, you might be disappointed, or you might be pleasantly surprised. You gotta be open to the possibility of changing your plans. If you like that video and you want to see more like them, hit like, share, and subscribe.